Hi, and welcome to another episode of Real Estate with Howard Drukarsh. For those who don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders, along with Arthur Bartram and Ron Petticord, of the largest independent real estate brokerage in Canada with over 5,300 agents. Along with that, I've been a member of the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board of Directors. I've also been on the Board of Directors of the Real Estate Council of Ontario, RECO, which is the regulator for all real estate agents in the province, and I sit on the board of the company I co-founded. If you're interested in finding out more about my own background, the first episode on our podcast is called Intro. It's an audio episode, but it talks about my journey to success and the challenges I had along the way. All the other episodes you can listen to on YouTube, and those are video episodes. This isn't your typical real estate podcast. We'll be interviewing and talking to real estate agents, brokers, people in pre-construction, developers, people who market pre-construction, media people, lawyers, and people we find fascinating who may not be in real estate, but just have had an interesting career and have done what all the other guests have done, which is overcome roadblocks, setbacks, rejection, failures, and still had that trajectory straight up, maybe up and down a bit, but to get to be success. My own background is I was a real estate agent for 20 years before starting the company that I did. And then as the company grew, I would become the manager of the different branches. And then sometime after that, I was also president and broker of record. So along the way, one of the things I found interesting is one of the most important things in a real estate brokerage is the people, the agents. And my role was to interview and to hire people along the way. Over the time that I was active in the company, I hired over 1,000 people. With new people, after a while, I could really tell the ones that I thought would do well. There was an enthusiasm, there was an energy, there was some kind of a spark that I thought would relate well to their clients. And then the other side of the coin were people transferring for other brokerages. And that was just really flattering to the company because they were leaving brands that were perhaps a little more well-known or a lot well-known and came to us because they felt it was more value and the brand had now reached a level where they thought it would help them as well. So that's my own background. Today's guest is Jonathan Griffiths, and I've known Jonathan for many years. He's a real estate lawyer. He's a terrific guy. He has a fascinating family, and I asked Jonathan to talk about his family before we get into stories about Jonathan, because there isn't an unsuccessful sibling in Jonathan's world. So Jonathan Griffiths, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's talk first about your family, and then we'll move on to you.
Well, Howard, we have to first talk about you. I mean, you've been so successful that I feel in awe of your presence. But you know, the thing I always feel most in awe about you, Howard, is you're always so perfectly turned out, so beautifully dressed, such a fashion plate, and it's so nice because most people dress so badly now, but you're just a tremendous icon for right at home with the way that you turn yourself out, dress so well, speak so well. You're always so nice to everybody. You're always so eloquent when you speak. So you're just a very, very impressive person in my book. So
well, thank you.
I often think I want to dress like Howard.
Well, listen, thank you so much, Jonathan, because this is the end of the podcast. You know what? I think we're both very professional, and I think that's why we relate so well. I mean, you come into the offices ready to do what you're doing. You're doing training. If you're working with agents, looking at you dress professionally. This is a time when people are, living in sweatpants and sweatshirts. So I think we always got along, although we didn't talk a great deal, but we've known each other for many years, and I'm really delighted to have you on this podcast. So, okay, let me turn it back to you. You really do have a very successful family. I mean, your children. So, all right, go ahead and try to be equally complimentary to each child so that when they see this, they won't be mad at you. That's your challenge.
Well, I guess I can tell you a little bit, but I have to start off by telling you they have an absolutely amazing mother extraordinarily disciplined, successful, an absolutely great mentor for them.
Mhm.
And I think there was used to be an Italian thing, don't ever disappoint your mother. Um, and I think that's probably the first thing in the consistency is that they've had such a great example from their mom, who's um, if if there was a choice between writing a book chapter for or getting a book chapter finished or an article or for a medical textbook, um, and helping one of the kids get their school project done, she'd pick off the editor of the medical textbook to help the kids. So that's the children always came first, um, and she's always been totally dedicated to them. Um, so so she always said that I was as immature as the children were, right? So I can't, I can't. All I can do is, if there's any success, all I can do is tell you about Anne's success with the kids. But we've been extremely fortunate with them. So we have four. The oldest is called Gerald. Gerald is a labor and employment lawyer, and he's a partner in a boutique labor and employment firm. Um, then we have, so he's the oldest. The the next lawyer is is our third, who is Malcolm, and um, Malcolm Malcolm watched his brother be terrified in McCarthy, Tetro, and in the big firm system, and so I've been very fortunate. Malcolm's come and worked with me,
Mhm.
um, and it's terrific, and it's especially at my advanced age, it's absolutely fabulous. Where some of my colleagues are starting to wind down, that we we have a built-in succession plan.
Mhm.
So super fortunate with Malcolm. The clients all seem to love him, and he's just doing a great job. Um, then our youngest is a doctor. He's 27. I guess he graduated when he's 24. He's a surgery resident in general surgery, and then this year he's gone to business school in France. It's the same business school as his sister went in. Basically, what was happening was with COVID that they canceled all the operations, so there really wasn't much going on.
Mhm.
Um, so it was an ideal time to go away. Um, so he basically had two choices. One of them was to go the traditional method and they have some great postgraduate courses at Harvard. We got into Harvard, but he didn't go. Instead of that, he's taken a totally different tack, which is like just a regular business school. Um, and the idea being that the morons who've messed up our health system are the ones who've been taught by these Harvard guys,
Hmm.
and we need a fresh approach of to try and get our health system going better. So that's why he's in France, and I got an email from him today, and they're working on um, with recurring diseases. You have sometimes you've got something wrong with you, and it's a foretaste of something else coming, like follow-up problems. So they're developing some AI to
Hmm.
to put into medical programs so that it'll warn the doctor,
Hmm.
hey, listen, this guy's going to recur at such and such, likely to recur at such and such a time, or he's going to have some other complication, and it'll bring it to the minds of the doctor. So it's kind of it's an innovative approach. So he's our youngest. He's 27, and then Joanna is our second oldest, and she went to this business school in France called INSEAD, and it totally transformed her. Just an absolutely fabulous school. And I could tell you briefly what happened. It's very entrepreneurial, and they have a contest for entrepreneurs every year, and so she came up with a concept, and it's basically that women leak at a certain age, and at that stage you either use the pens or you didn't use anything. So the idea was to create underwear with a pad in it, which you could then wash, I think, 200 times. So anyway, that was the beginning of this concept, and now she started the business, and it's all online. Well, actually, she has two stores, but it's basically online, and it's much more than, it's called Knix, Knix, and it's much more than just underwear at this stage. So she's been super fortunate. Huge number of ups and downs, but at the moment, being online in the pandemic it's a pretty nice position to be in.
Well, I mean, Joanna, your sons, I mean, everybody that we've interviewed have found a way to take that trajectory to success, where it is up and down, and just keep going, right? And
absolutely. And we've been so fortunate. We had our best year ever last year. But we just decided we were going to keep going and no excuses. So that's what we did. So I started off, when I was just in the office, I started off wearing floppy clothes. And then I remembered Howard, and I had to look professional. So I got up every morning, I came to the office, and I dressed up, just like it was normal business. And we kept going. Super fortunate.
Well, for absolute transparency, the only time I come out of sweats these days is when we do the podcast. So that's my real world right now. But, nobody sees me at home, and I'm mostly on the computer. I'm not doing Zooms as much. But what a change, eh?
We're seeing I see a lot of clients still.
Yeah.
We have plexiglass. We have
really?
Wiping everything down.
Yeah.
The two doctors in the family police me all the time. So
good.
Okay. We've been very fortunate.
So good. So before we started the podcast, there was the opportunity for me to talk about your children and their success, or there was the opportunity for you. And I thought, if I talk about it, I won't get it right, and they'll be blaming you. But if you talk about it, you may not get it right, and they'll still be blaming you.
Yes, I know, Howard. I thought you were my friend, but you really threw me in it on this one.
I think you did great. So let's assume they'll say the same thing. So now let's talk about Jonathan. Tell me, and these are things that influenced. Well, in this case, we talked about your kids influenced by the parents. What were your when you grew up, your influences from your own family, your background?
So, hardworking parents, and this is kind of a psychological thing. I probably shouldn't even tell you, but through a series of circumstances, partly because my father's my father's a minister, and his his theology professor, who was a friend of his, he was the minister of York Minster Park Baptist Church, and he was also the chaplain at Upper Canada College. So he essentially had coffee with my parents when they were then they came in Canada to look at the church. He took them up. They were at the Park Plaza. Took them up Avenue Road straight into Upper Canada College, and he told the principal that my father was a good guy, so I was probably all right. So they let me in on the spot. But at that stage, it was an extremely rich school, and I was kind of the poor kid from the wrong side of the tracks. So I think part of me has been trying to catch up from being behind, from being the poor kid. So I suspect that's been a fair bit of what's driven me.
Well, it's interesting because when we talk to people about their backgrounds and their family, I have yet to meet anybody who were not driven to succeed because of how they grew up. In other words, we're not interviewing people that started out being successful. They're people that started out who had to find their way to success, and to me, that's the more interesting story.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when I was there, it was different because now at that school it's multicultural. There are lots of people there who are there because they're smart, as opposed to being rich. And it was way cheaper when I went. Like when I went, it was about $1,000 a year. Now it's maybe 40-ish. But I can still remember one. They went around the class, and the teacher asked, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to be a lawyer." And some guy picked up and said, "Griffiths, you're not smart enough to be a lawyer. You'll never be a lawyer. You're an idiot." And it's funny because I still see this guy.
Wow.
He ended up being a lawyer at McCarthy's and then at Miller Thompson. He's a tax lawyer.
Yeah.
But I still see this guy. And every time I see him, I'm sure he's forgotten. But I have to thank him so much for kicking me in the teeth and making me a better person, because there was no way I was going to get put down like that.
Good for you. I mean, I think I love these stories because my own journey has been a lot of ups and downs, a lot of failures. Until I did the intro, I actually didn't realize how many times I had to pick myself up and keep going. And I think that's why I appreciate when we have these guests. Their stories are so interesting, and I can relate, which is one of the things I guess why I enjoy doing these so well. So good. What about this? Every career is built on, in my opinion, 3 really important things: luck, persistence, and hard work. How would you rate those in your career as a lawyer?
Well, luck's an interesting one. I never, when I was a kid, I had a real estate license. I got a license when I was 19. And when I was in university and law school, I sold real estate. And you'd think that a 19-year-old wouldn't be able to sell any houses. But I mean, just to give you some thought, like when I went to law school, it cost about $500 a year, and I would make $7,000 a year in a summer selling real estate. So I sold. That was pretty serious money back then. So I was lucky. My brother was a real estate broker. So just as with my wife and the kids, it's my brother that's really behind this. So I guess that's luck, right? And then I didn't want to be a real estate lawyer. I didn't do very well. I wanted to be a tax lawyer or a litigation lawyer. Um, and then all of a sudden, when I was coming out of the bar admission course, the lawyer who was teaching real property law um, went off to do some overseas volunteer work, and they needed somebody to teach the real property law. So I was like, I guess 25. Um, they gave me a book, a binder, and they told me go teach. So it was quite an experience, but it turned me into a real estate lawyer because I would teach this course like every month. And at that stage, you only took the course if you wanted to start your own brokerage. Mm. So a lot of kind of look, brokers you would know with big companies, I taught. They were a lot older than I was, but I taught them. And I all of a sudden, you know, it's funny, if you're teaching and you get asked the same question enough times, you sound like you know what you're doing. So I ended up totally by luck building a practice very quickly because I was doing the teaching. So in '81 I started the firm that we have now, but that was total luck. I would never have been a real estate lawyer if I hadn't got asked to teach the course, the real property law course. So the next one was persistence. Well, I probably did a lot of what I was super fortunate. I was really pretty successful very quickly, and I then kind of lost focus. I guess I owned like 15 properties. We were doing a condo development. I invested in and was helping run an integrated textile manufacturing company. So I was going every which way. And then like 1990 came along and I totally hit the skid. Like just worst nightmares. Everything went wrong. Just so I went through a period from 1990 to probably about 1998 or 99 when I was technically bankrupt. Right, I was a dead man walking. You wouldn't have known it, but I was. So the persistence really was. Some of my colleagues in the same in the same situation went bankrupt. I didn't. I kept going, and I'm glad I did. But yeah, it was terrible. I got to a stage where I couldn't think ahead because I just couldn't see any way out of what had happened to me, or what I had caused to happen to me by I don't know if you remember that the interest rates went crazy. So that really was the persistence. And what was the other one? Discipline?
Well, hard work.
Hard work. Oh yeah. So I learned very early, partly because when I was a kid, we moved around a lot. So we started in Scotland, and then we went to South Africa, and I got to school in South Africa, and all of a sudden I was behind. I was supposed to learn Afrikaans. I didn't know Afrikaans. So I was coming from behind, so I had to work super hard to catch up. Then we moved back to Scotland, and I then became the kid from South Africa, and the South African school system was nowhere near as advanced as the Scottish one. So then I was catching up. They'd done like 2 years of Latin and 3 years of French, and I'd done nothing of either. So I then had to catch up. Then after 2 years, we came here, and when we came here, they put me ahead a year, but I had a whole lot of weaknesses. I had a whole lot of gaps, And at that school at that stage, it was streamed. So they had basically A, B, C, D, E. So they not only put me ahead a year, they put me in the A stream. And so I had to work like crazy. So I realized early on that I wasn't any smarter than anybody else, but so the only way I was going to get ahead was by working harder than everybody else. So that's really been my thing is there are some people who are super smart and they can succeed without having to work hard, but they're very few and far between. Um, but I knew I just had to keep working and grinding it out. So I had no illusions that I was smart, so I could leapfrog everybody. And you can read books about working 4 hours a day, but I haven't been able to do that. I get up like I can't stay in bed in the morning. I get in probably about 7:30, and I get home maybe 7:30 or 8. And I can't stop working. I feel so guilty, or I feel like I'm letting somebody down. It's a sickness, Howard.
Well, you could either say it's a sickness or a blessing, because what it does is, Jonathan, it keeps you so sharp. Like there, as we get older, my experience is people who retire just lose an edge.
Oh yeah, it's a shame to retire. I mean, that's
Right.
my bias
Yeah.
is it's a pity.
Yeah.
Um, and and we have to look at our, and this is kind of just the way I look at it, Howard. I may be totally wrong, but um, I I have a friend, a good friend, who started a mortgage company that you would all know the name of, and that mortgage company was largely owned by some large life insurance companies. So my friend tells me that, and this is a good few years ago, they got the the life insurance company decided that they would do a life expectancy study on their senior executives, and he was a senior executive because he was running the mortgage company. And they came back and they told them, look, the actuaries think that you've got a 92-year lifespan. And I think at that stage he's probably in his late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And it just gave him a totally different aspect on life, right? I'm not 49 and I'm gonna retire in 10 years or 12 years or 13. Um, I'm 49 or 48 and I'm gonna live till I'm 92.
Wow.
I have another 40 something years left. And so he went and started his own mortgage company, which he's doing very well. And he's probably in his late 60s now. But it just gives you a different idea.
Right. Fascinating.
So that's kind of a bias and mindset that I have.
Okay. What about in your, it can be any part of your life, but who has been the biggest influence?
It's funny because you sometimes don't know at the time who the biggest influence is. And this would be outside of immediate family or parents and so on.
Sure.
But when we came to Canada, my father had a church that where there was a very distinct, well, a very rich developer. Let's put it that way. And he was not only very rich, but he was very generous as well. And not only was he generous, he was humble. This guy was a great guy. I mean, they say at one stage he owned 7 miles long by 1 mile wide in Scarborough. Like he just owned an awful lot. He owned Flemington, Don Mills. So he was and I got fairly close to him. I used to work for him in the summers on his construction site. Um, and whenever I talked to him about the business and say you, he'd always say we. Like he'd say to me, "It's our business." Like I was the kid, 16-year-old driving the dump truck, right? And this was the tycoon, but um, and then I would watch him at church, and he would. There was a gap between that. We had Sunday school and then we had church. It was a 20-minute gap, and this tycoon would be walking around shaking hands with all the nobodies in the church, right? And he was so nice to everybody. Um, and he he would he would listen to people. He was never arrogant. He was always polite. He was always self-deprecating. Um, and and most of all, he had the best cars, Howard, like the best cars. And he'd let me drive them. Like I was 16, 17, 18. He'd let me drive them. Um, and he'd listen to people. He was generous. Uh, he was humble. He treated people like people. Um, we we at that stage we had this system in the church where there were elders, and each elder had a district, and there'd be two elders for the district. And he and I were the elders, and we used to drive around in his Lincoln Continental Mark IV, and we go see all these people. They were ordinary. It wasn't in a great area of town. It was a working class kind of church, and we'd be he and I would go and see these people, and he was absolutely wonderful, and he never made a big deal about his money. He would quietly say, "I'll look after that." So much was done anonymously. Um, he was so kind to so many people. Somebody would show up in the church from Ireland or somewhere else, and he'd give them a job on the site. He just so so he was probably the biggest influence that um, he was the guy I wanted to be like.
Wow, what a great.
I'll never be as rich as he is,
Yeah.
as he was, but hopefully in some other things. People are people. Yeah, they're not important people and unimportant people. People are like we treat everybody the same. Um, I don't care what they do. Um, and a lot of the people that are not as well off or not as educated, they they're just better people. Um, even though they don't have the prestige or the PhDs or the doctors or the lawyers or whatever you want to think about there. So I think that's what he taught me. Um,
And he taught you well, Jonathan, because when people think about you or talk about you, and people I know in the business, there's a whole lot of like for Jonathan Griffiths, and you can. There's a whole spectrum of lawyers out there, and I think you've just become a really good representation of that man and the way you've conducted your career. So compliments to him and to you. I mean, it's not easy in this day and age, but you're doing a great job at it. So
well, we've got great staff. I've been really, really fortunate. They're they're fabulous. They're self-starters,
mm-hmm.
and they're the ones bugging me to do things rather than the other way around. And and we really don't have any kind of a hierarchy here. It doesn't matter whether you're the receptionist or a lawyer. As far as I'm concerned, they're colleagues, and so we're very flat. We don't we value everybody. Um, so so maybe that's part of what I learned from him. Um,
Well, again, this is something that this is the most we've ever talked, because we would just see each other in passing in different offices. But this is something that I don't know where I learned it from, but my wife, whenever we'd go anywhere, she'd say, "You talk to everybody." And I've always felt that I want to talk to everybody because it's just a nice thing to do. People don't expect to be treated with respect, I think, and if you do, you become remarkably noticeable, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, everybody's shy. Everybody's got some sort of an inferiority complex, and sometimes it shows by arrogance because it's just covering up, right?
Right.
It's what in Britain they used to call inverted snobbery, right?
Never heard that one. Yeah. Okay, so here we go, John. This is my last question, and it's always my favorite. If you could, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
It's going to turn out really well.
Oh, what a great answer. Really good way to end it. Perfect. Good optimism. All right, listen, I know you're a busy guy, and I really appreciate the time. I'd love to have you back on in the future as well.
It'll be fun.
So
Thank you.
For now, thank you so much, and good luck when your kids see this podcast.
Yeah. I may be moving out of the district.
No, stay where you are. You're in a good district. All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Stay safe.
Thanks, Howard.
Nice
Thanks
to
for
see
having me.
Okay.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. And certainly a lot of thanks go out to Jonathan Griffiths. He's a busy man, and I really appreciate the time. If you enjoyed the podcast, please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our podcasts on YouTube. And if you'd like to reach us, you can do it one of two ways. You can email us at info@rewithhd.com, or you can also find us on the web at rewithhd.com. So until next time, be safe, be kind, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time. Thanks.